the key thing that we want to do today is really take a critical look at our own skills and strengths. That way we have greater awareness of what capacities we have. And hopefully from there, identify some really good specific examples that we can share with potential employers so that we can more effectively market ourselves in the job search. That's the whole goal, again, is to make sure that you're doing some self-assessment and that you're walking away with some key examples. I want to stress that this is just an hour-long session. So you're not going to come away from this conversation with all the answers to all the questions. In all likelihood, there's going to be a lot of additional work that you're going to need to do beyond the hour-long that we have together. The goal here is to get the wheels turning so that you have kind of a system or a framework that you can use to continue this reflection on your own and to think through, how you can promote these skills and strengths. So you may be asking, like, why is this topic important? Why do our skills and strengths matter? Well, I think about this from two angles. I think about it, first of all, from the employer's perspective. Clearly they're looking to understand your skills and strengths because that's really going to tell them what results you can produce for them. For example, if an employer is hiring for a receptionist position, they're going to want someone who can use technology, someone who is friendly. They're going to want to see certain qualities, right, in a candidate. This ensures that the person that they're hiring is really going to fulfill that role effectively. They're going to be able to use the technology, represent the company effectively to customers, and just be able to hit the ground running with limited training. So from an employer's perspective, knowing your skills and strengths is key to really being able to, again, identify who's going to be a good fit for the position, who's going to be able to deliver the most value. Now, from the position of a job seeker, this is an important topic because knowing your skills and strengths really helps you know what kinds of jobs you would be good at and helps you to explain to a potential employer why you're the right person for a specific job. So if I know that I have skills as a leader, I might aim for supervisory roles, for example. Knowing that this is a skill of mine, I can also come up with examples of how that has benefited my employers in the past. Again, so that I can really make the case that I'd be the right person for a supervisory job, as an example. So that is why skills and strengths matter. In terms of skills versus strengths, this is a question I often get from folks. They wonder, gosh, what's the difference? They seem really similar. So I just want to address that right out of the gate. The way I like to think about skills versus strengths are that skills are something that can be taught and learned over in a classroom maybe, but also in a workplace or maybe on your own through self-study. The point is that you can draw from expertise to build that skill. So one of you mentioned that you're a classical violist. Obviously that's a skill. You got to, take lessons and practice and learn it over time. So that's a good example of a skill, but there's also things like languages, different types of technology. It doesn't have to be, though, a specific technology. It can be a strategy. Again, there's a variety of skills that you could have or possess or build down the road. Now, in terms of strengths, I think of strengths as qualities that develop over a longer period of time. They're more ingrained in who we are as people, and they can't be learned easily. A good example is enthusiasm. I don't think that people can do a very good job of feigning enthusiasm. Either you are or you aren't, and that's part of your personality. Accuracy is another kind of strength, like maybe you're just really precise and meticulous. Again, that's not something you can easily, develop in like a classroom setting. It's more something that you build over a longer period of time. So those are skills and strengths in a nutshell. I'm going to pull out of the presentation and just give folks a chance to ask questions at this point. Any concerns or questions about skills and strengths or why they're important?
I think, how do you identify them? That's like the million-dollar question here.
Yeah, well, and that leads in really nicely into some tools that we have actually. So maybe let's just use this segue to talk about some tools, because this is the million-dollar question, as you said, Narda. And when I started coaching, I noticed that when I'd ask people, what are your skills and strengths? Oftentimes they drew a blank. So myself and several of my coaching colleagues, we actually developed a tool, and I'm going to share it with you. It's the skills and strengths inventory that Patrick shared. And I'm just going to go into full screen here so that it's really nice and easy to see. So this is a great tool if you're drawing a blank, because basically what it is it's a really big list of skills broken down into different categories. So if you're thinking, gosh, I don't know what my skills are, this is a good place to look. Are there areas of communication, for example, where you're really strong? Interpersonal skills, that's a whole nother category, being able to interact with people and build rapport and relate. Being able to manage a group or a team, being able to manage processes, leading others. That's a little bit different than management, right? And then of course there's many specialized areas here. This isn't comprehensive, I should stress, but this is pretty thorough. So this should give you a lot of great ideas if you're feeling stuck. I should also share that Skill Up itself, I'm going to pull out of the share screen. Skill Up has some great tools too. So there is in Skill Up, I'm just going to pull this up. Thanks for being patient. So when you're in the Skill Up website, there's a section for careers where you can actually do a little bit of research into what skills are needed or what skills you might have. So I'm going to just look up, retail salesperson, for example. And then from there, you can take a quiz where it really gives you, I'm just going to kind of enter the results here, where it gives you some ideas for specific positions. And then you can actually learn what kinds of training are necessary, what types of jobs. So there are a lot of ways you can brainstorm this using the tools we've provided here today. But we're also, again, going to do some group coaching around this to think through it further.
Why is it that it's so hard for all of us? Like, I think everyone's challenged with this. Like, why is it so hard for us to self-identify skills? Like when you read a job description and, they'll say, I want this, this, and this, and you should be able to do X, Y, and Z. Like we can say, oh yeah, I can do that, but when it comes to saying, what are you good at? Like, why is it so hard for us to be able to do that? In your experience, like, why is this our sad reality? It's so hard.
I think because it's impossible to be objective about ourselves, right? Like we're in our own little world, we're going through life, and it's hard to get perspective on our own, performance, our own backstory, our own history. So that's why coaching is so valuable, because you have this outside perspective that can come in and draw things out. But I'll also add that, you know, in addition to coaching, you have people in your life too that know you well. So draw from them too if you're really stuck on this. You know, go to previous coworkers or colleagues and ask them, like, of all the, you know, all your experience with me, where do you think I really shined? Like, what skills or strengths did you notice in me? You know, managers too often, you know, are doing things like performance reviews and giving feedback. So they're often in a great position to give you ideas and thoughts on this as well when you're struggling yourself to draw that out. Does that answer your question, Holly?
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks.
It's a good question for sure. Select 3 skills or strengths that you believe are important for your future work. I'm going to give you an alternative as well. If you're not sure what the next step is for you, what I would invite you to do is pick the 3 skills and strengths you would most like to use in your next job.
I love the question of like thinking about the future of work and the skills that we will think, like, what if we don't know what skills employers are looking for different jobs? Like, that's kind of hard, you know?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think there's a couple of thoughts I have about that. One is job descriptions. You know, as you're looking at positions that are of interest to you, the skills are very often listed there. So that's a great place to turn if you're not sure what employers are looking for. Your network is also an excellent resource. So if you know folks in a specific industry where you would like to work, it's a great question to be asking them. You know, what do you think are the most important skills if I want to get into this field in terms of my next job? About the benefit for your employer, right? So there's what we were able to accomplish, but there's also thinking about, okay, what did that actually mean for my employer and their bottom line? So now that you've come up with that example of something you accomplished, think about what that meant for your employer. What did that mean for their business, for their bottom line, for the organization? If you need another way to think about this, think about what would have happened if you didn't have that skill or strength. How would that have hurt your employer? Sometimes if it's hard to think of the positive example, it can help to go the reverse direction. Think about what if this were absent? So think about that benefit for your employer because you had that skill, or if it's more helpful, what it would have meant for your employer if you didn't have that skill or strength. I've got an example here of taking something you've done before and thinking about how you position it for a future employer here. Again, going back to that hospitality example, in the past, you might have said, as a manager in hospitality, I was responsible for training our seasonal staff. I managed our frontline staff to maintain our guest first core value. The way you might reframe that, just to give your future employer a really solid sense of the need you will fill for them, is to say, I am skilled at quickly training a large number of new staff to meet companies' needs. I am able to motivate staff to work efficiently in fast-paced environments. So again, it's just a subtle shift, but it's about taking what you've done before and really making it kind of point toward the future, what you're going to do for them, so that they understand really clearly how your skills and strengths will matter to them. So with this in mind, I'd like you to take a moment to see what you wrote down in your previous reflections, and then try to restate that skill or strength in a way that connects it to why that skill and strength is important to a future employer. So thinking, how can I present this to say, this is the need I can fulfill for you? what was helpful about today's conversation in terms of thinking about your skills and strengths, as well as where you got stuck, if you got stuck. So please feel free to share out, again, around what was helpful today and where you got stuck.
Honestly, the big lists of skills and strengths was very helpful to sort of, have identifiable, concrete things to say yes or no to.
Yeah, right. It's good to have that pre-generated list so that you're not having to do all the work of generating ideas, but rather kind of do a gut check on each of those. Do I have that? Do I not have that? Anybody else around something that was helpful, or again, a place you're still feeling stuck?
I think that list was very helpful to identify them. But again, for me, it's so hard to explain it during an interview, explain it and not mumble during an interview. And it was helpful to hear how other people are explaining it in a group setting.
Oh, good. So it was good for you to actually hear other people talk about their skills and strengths. Well, I'll say, Nerda, it's awkward. Interviews are something that you don't do every day. So something I always stress is that you're going to have to practice, right? Going into the interview. And actually the tool, the inventory, I don't think I've shared. I'm just going to quickly show you all a component of it that I think will be really helpful. So there's the lists, but there's also a page here where you can actually capture your skills and then take some time to flush out each of these skills in a more specific way. So for example, if your skill is communication, talk about how you gain that skill. What training, education, or experience have you had using this skill? What specific projects or ways have you used it? What are some of the results that you've produced as a result of this skill? And any stories that you might have that are a compelling, description of ways that you've made a difference with your skill. So that is what I would encourage you to do as a next step, is to really, take some time to, again, be a little bit more comprehensive, get that list going. And then once you have that list, do these exercises with each individual skill so that you have a whole library of examples that you can pull from when you're thinking about your resume, your cover letter, your interviews. That way you really are going into those preparations feeling like you already have some material ready to go, and all you're having to do is refine and tailor it for the specific employer that you're targeting. On the SkillUp website, there's this resume optimizer where if you're in SkillUp and you click on resources and update your resume for each job you apply for, you can actually do some work on your resume. And again, you can pull from this library to really think about enhancing and making sure that those skills are really shining through.